Have you ever noticed that there are times in your life where you're just more stressed or anxious or irritable than you usually are? Maybe you catch yourself snapping at your friends or your coworkers or your significant other. Maybe your mind keeps spinning, like ruminating about something that happened earlier, replaying conversations in your head or worrying about the things that haven't even happened to you yet. Maybe you're just walking around with this cloud of tension that hangs over you. The strange thing is, you don't really know why, do you? Nothing obvious has changed. You're eating the same foods, you're going to the same job, you're sleeping in the same bed. On the surface, life looks the same, but inside you feel off. And in those moments, it can be really confusing. Like you start asking yourself questions like, what's wrong with me? Did something happen to me that I don't remember? Am I just in a bad mood for no reason? And sometimes you even beat yourself up over it, thinking like, why can't I shake this feeling off? Why do I feel like this right now? But here's the thing, those shifts in your moods, those days or weeks that you feel on edge, don't come out of nowhere. There's actually something happening beneath the surface that explains why you feel that way. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. And if you've ever struggled with this, keep watching till the end because I got a free meditation course that I'm going to give you that's designed to help you get back on track. So let's unpack what's really going on here. Here's the thing. Every single day, you have thousands and thousands of thoughts that move through your mind. But out of all of those thoughts, only a tiny fraction are what we would call conscious thoughts. And what I mean by conscious thoughts is the kind that you actually direct. Like, I'm thirsty, I'm going to grab my drink, and then you grab your drink and you drink it. That's a conscious, deliberate thought. But most of your thoughts aren't like that. The vast majority of our thoughts are happening beneath the surface, and they have to be because think about it. Would you really want to have to remind yourself to pump your heart every single second? Like imagine walking down the street and going, okay, heart, beat. Okay, now beat again. Okay, again. Don't forget this time. You'd never get anything done if you had to do that. If you had to constantly manage all the different processes in your body, like your heart, your breathing, your digestion, you'd never be able to think straight. So your brain does you a huge favor. It takes all of that complexity and it runs all those processes in the background so that your conscious mind can focus on the few things that actually need your attention in the moment. And because so much of your mental life is automatic, that means that most of your thoughts are invisible to you. They're still there. They're still influencing you, but you don't realize it. And that's why it can feel like sometimes your moods or your behaviors are coming out of nowhere because you're not aware of the hidden stream that's shaping them. So let me explain this. Your conscious mind can't possibly notice everything that's happening all at once. So there's just too much information. So what it does is it filters. And the way that it filters is by highlighting what matters most to you in that moment. So think of it like this. You walk into the kitchen and your eyes immediately go to the fridge to grab the milk inside of it. It goes to the cupboard with the bowls. It goes to the drawer with the spoons. All those details line up with one simple story, which is it's time to make food. That's your filter working. But let's say that there's a different day and instead of being hungry, you're cleaning. So in that sense, you're not going to be noticing the fridge or the bowls. You might be noticing like the crumbs on the counter or the water spots on the sink, the cleaning supplies under the cabinet. It's the exact same kitchen, but it looks completely different depending on what you need. In one of my earlier videos, I talked about this a little bit. There's something called schemas. That's those mental frameworks that we carry around that guide how we see and act in the world. So you got one schema for making breakfast. You got another schema for cleaning the kitchen. And whatever schema is active, that's the lens that you see reality through. That's why the same space can feel like two totally different environments depending on what you're doing. Because most of your thoughts are happening automatically, like outside of your awareness, then that means a lot of your life is actually being directed by things you don't even see. And that's exactly what Carl Jung was pointing to whenever he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. I love that quote because it's so true. If you're not aware of the patterns that are running in the background of your mind, then you'll end up living those patterns thinking that that's just the way things are. You'll think it's fate or it's just your personality, but really it's just the unconscious doing its thing. The moment that you start to notice those patterns, the moment that you bring them into the light, so to speak, that's when you can actually start to change them. So to show you how all this works, here's a little thought experiment. So let's imagine that you're participating in some kind of brain study where they test your reaction speed. Like you have your brain hooked up to an fMRI scanner and they're going to show you a picture and then see how long it takes for your brain to light up on the computer screen after they show you a picture. Let's say that the doctor comes in and then he hooks you up to the machine and then he leaves the room for a few minutes to go finish some paperwork or something. Do you think that the computer screen would just be blank, like your brain's there on the screen? Do you think it would be showing anything, or do you think that there would always be activity going on? If you think about it, it's kind of obvious. Like, obviously your brain would still be kind of buzzing with activity even whenever you're just sitting there doing nothing. That background activity is what neuroscientists call the default mode network, or the DMN for short. It's basically the brain regions that light up whenever your mind isn't focused on the outside world, like whenever you're daydreaming. So if you want to, just play along with me here for a second. So think of someone famous right now, whoever pops up in your head first. Now think of someone that you deeply love, like someone that you really care about. If you played along, just notice what happened there. So you're still here with me watching the video, but at the same time, you're also somewhere out there, like picturing that person in your mind. It's almost like there's this see-through, faint, like little film that you see of the picture of them, and it's like between your inner world and your outer world. That's the default mode network. That's what's happening whenever you daydream, whenever you replay past conversations, whenever you're worrying about the future. It's that little voice in your head, maybe even right now, that's making a little comment about me or this video, say. So like, have you ever been in the shower and you're just replaying a conversation that you had earlier in the day? Like maybe you had a disagreement with someone and you're just there in the shower thinking of the perfect comeback that you wish you'd said. What happens a lot of times is like you catch yourself doing that, and then you laugh a little bit, and then you realize that you've been having this full-on argument in your own head. That's the same thing as like a second ago when you thought of someone famous or thought of someone that you loved. So what I'm trying to get at here is that the default mode network is like your brain's idle mode, but it's never really idle. It's constantly like generating thoughts and stories and mental movies and just basically daydream thoughts. And most of the time you're not even aware of how much this is shaping how you feel. And that's why meditation is such a powerful tool. It helps you quiet down that background noise, which means less rumination, less worry, and more clarity. And again, like I said, at the end of the video, so like in a few minutes from now, I'll tell you how you can start doing this for yourself with the program that I put together for free. So let's get back to the question that we started with. So why do we feel sometimes like we're grumpy or stressed or anxious or just feel off for a few days at a time, even though nothing obvious has changed? Well, we talked about the default mode network. That's part of it. That DMN is running in the background. It's churning out these different thoughts, even if you're not aware of them. And those thoughts don't just appear out of nowhere. They're often being fed and kept alive by something that psychologists call priming. So priming is whenever a cue in your environment, like a sight or a sound or a smell, triggers a chain of thoughts and feelings without you realizing it. So here's an example. Let's say that you drive to work on the same route every single day, but there's 1 week, let's say, where there's construction, so you take a different road. But along that new route, there's a billboard of a businessman. And let's just say, just for argument's sake here, let's say that he looks a little bit like your dad, like he's wearing the same kind of suit, he has the same kind of briefcase. And let's just say that you have some sort of unresolved stuff with your dad. Like maybe he was successful, but he was distant, so he never really gave you the love that you needed or something. So every morning that you pass that billboard, something inside you kind of gets nudged a little bit. Like your brain registers something and it plants a little seed. And that little seed grows into thoughts and feelings that you project throughout your day. So maybe at work, you feel more defensive whenever your boss gives you feedback, or maybe you come home and you snap at your partner for not noticing something that you did because something about that makes you feel not seen. So even like your inner critic might feel louder, like pushing you harder or telling you that you never measured up or something like that. And that's just one example. It's kind of like a ridiculous example, but for you, it could be something like a song on the radio. It could be like a smell that reminds you of someone somewhere. It could be a stranger's face that you see that reminds you of something that sets something up. The point is, all of these cues are around us all the time, and they shape us more than we realize. And all the huge corporations have done tons of studies on this. Like, for example, fast food companies like McDonald's deliberately use the colors red and yellow because red and yellow together are known to grab your attention and stimulate your appetite. And the color red is even known to create a sense of urgency. Like that's why people say that they see red in a fight. Is that it's that color that primes your nervous system to feel activated. So whenever you're driving down the highway and you see those golden arches and suddenly you're more hungry than you're hungrier than you were 5 minutes ago, that's what priming is. So whenever we put this all together, you can start to kind of see a bigger picture here. The default mode network, that daydreaming aspect of consciousness, is always running in the background, churning out thoughts and stories and little mental movies. And priming keeps those stories alive. It throws fuel on the fire with these different cues from the outside world. So together, they create this little echo chamber beneath your awareness where the inner chatter and the outer triggers feed off of each other. And that's why it's so easy to spend like a whole week feeling stressed and anxious and irritable without ever really making the connection to what set it all in motion. And that's why if you really want to understand yourself, you have to start looking deeper than the surface. And that's exactly why that's exactly where meditation comes in. A lot of people think that meditation is some kind of strange, mystical practice with chakras and magical powers and secret rituals and all that. And honestly, I used to think that too. I used to think that meditation meant like you're sitting down cross-legged and humming and trying to activate chakras. And to be fair, there are practices that look like that, but that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is something called mindfulness meditation, which is the practice of noticing your thoughts as they arise, like seeing where they come from, watching how they shift and how they change. Maybe another way to say it is that mindfulness is about sharpening your attention. It's like training your mind to hold still for long enough to actually notice what's happening beneath the surface. And the more that you practice, the more finely tuned that your attention becomes until you can kind of see what's happening in your own mind with clarity. So that's kind of the first benefit of meditation. It trains you to catch those thoughts in the act, so to speak. So instead of being swept away by them and identifying with them and being led to anger or stress or whatever, you start to recognize them as they happen. And this is something that you can't really understand until you practice it and experience it. So another big benefit of meditation is that it helps you spot the little links between a cue and your reaction. So remember that billboard example? Without the practice of mindfulness to sharpen your awareness, you would just feel stressed and anxious and irritable and assume that it's like your personality or your mood or something. But whenever you practice mindfulness meditation, you start to master that skill of making those little connections between your inner world and your outer world. It's crazy because so many of us don't understand just how much of our lives are being narrated by these little patterns. And on top of all that, meditation actually changes the structure of your brain. So a team at Harvard found that after like 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation, people showed increases in what's called gray matter. And that's the brain tissue that handles things like memory, learning, emotional regulation, things like that. So you could think of gray matter as like the muscle of your brain. So just like lifting weights builds strength in your body, meditation builds strength in the parts of your brain that help you stay focused and calm and resilient under pressure. There's even studies that show reductions in stress hormones like cortisol. So in other words, meditation isn't just giving you a temporary sense of calm. It's literally reshaping your brain to make clarity and balance more of your natural states. So let's bring this all together. Every single day, we're living with thousands and thousands of thoughts. Most of them are outside of awareness, and our brains filter reality depending on what matters most to you in the moment. And those filters, those schemas, shape what you notice and what you ignore. The default mode network is always sort of buzzing in the background. And that's filling your mind with daydreams and inner chatter and little stories. And on top of that, you have little cues in your environment that are constantly priming you, sort of nudging your emotions and behaviors without you even realizing it. So whenever you put that all together, it's like no wonder we sometimes feel stressed or anxious or stuck without knowing why. But here's the good news to all this, is that none of that is set in stone. Through practicing meditation and self-awareness, you can start to notice those thoughts as they arise. You can see those little links between cues and reactions. So to make that as simple as possible for you, I put together a free 14-day meditation program that you can download in the description below. It's completely free. So Each session is like 10 or 15 minutes long, easy to fit into your morning routine or whatever. So over those 2 weeks, if you do the 14 days, I'll guide you step by step, starting with the breath. Then we go into sounds and emotions, and you'll even be able to handle distraction and how to work with restlessness. And eventually we end it with feeling what awareness feels like itself. So if you stick with it for the whole 14 days, you'll come away with way more focus, way more calm, and a whole new perspective on your mind. And as we looked at, the science backs it all up. Meditation literally strengthens the parts of your brain that are responsible for attention and memory and emotional balance. If you ever wanted to stop running your life on autopilot and like finally take back the steering wheel of your own mind, so to speak, that's the perfect place to start. So that's all for today. I really hope that you take advantage of the meditation program down below. I've been meditating pretty frequently for about 10 years, and it's helped me so much. So I really hope that you take advantage of that. Of course, if you like the video, feel free to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Follow me on Instagram @TheAaronMorris, and I'll see you guys next time.